Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. You'll notice if you have joined previous webinars that we have moved to another platform for webinars. So if there are any technical issues, do bear with us. It is our first time using Click Meeting, but hopefully it will be easy for you to navigate through. You will see a chat box and all attendees are able to use the chat box and we can see one another's comments. Please try to ensure that the comments are related to the session itself. If there are any questions in particular that you'd like answered from Bob, then feel free to write them and Bob will answer those towards the end of the session. So today's focus is our Max Science primary resource by Macmillan Education International Curriculum. This is a product focus webinar, so do bear that in mind, but Bob will be going through inquiry-based skills using our Max Science primary resource. As I said, if you have any questions, feel free to write them in the questions box. Over to you, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you, Raina, and a warm welcome to everyone, wherever you are. It's delightful to be able to speak to people on an international stage. Yes, I'm Bob Kibble, and I'm speaking to you from Scotland. And it's been a nice day today, and we're very lucky to have, well, it's a cloudy day, but it's dry. And I guess that I think many of our listeners are in the South America. So it's a place I look forward to visiting one day, and I hope one day we'll meet each other. But you're all very welcome. I'm going to run through a series of slides and try and explain some of the philosophy behind Max Science to start with, and then we'll have a look at in more detail at some of the product, and I'll give you a teacher's perspective. But we'll start off by welcoming you to my hometown at the moment. This is south of Edinburgh. It did look like this at one time this morning, but the clouds have come over. That's the River Tweed, and it's famous for fishing. And Peebles is a sort of a weaving town, I suppose, in its early days, and now it's more of a tourist guide venue. People come from Edinburgh for the day in Peebles. Of course, we're all in lockdown. And gradually the town is starting to take life again, but we're all being very sensible and wearing masks, etc. And my thoughts are with you wherever you are facing the same pandemic, global pandemic. We'll get through, of course, and we'll get through this presentation as well. Here we are with a bit of a menu for today. I want to start off by looking a little bit looking at science, teaching and learning and the philosophy that's guided Max Science to explain where we're coming from. And then I'll introduce the Max Science products and then how I might use Max Science as a teacher. So let's start off with this Max Science. This is the front cover of one of our student books. I was asked about 5 years ago to lead the team to write the series of books. And I was invited to produce a philosophy to guide the team, which is quite a challenge, really, and it's quite an honour. And I had to think very hard about what I had learned over 50 years as a science educator in order to put my very best foot forward in planning and steering the writing of Max Science. So I thought about what I know about what's called best practice, and I'm going to share that with you today. But first of all, a task for you. So here's a list of possible features of a science lesson. Just take your time and have a look through. There are only some features. And I have a question for you to think about. Choose 1, 2, or 3 of these which you think are the most important elements of a good science lesson. And you might want to type your answers in the chat box. I'm not going to mark anyone or pass judgment. It's interesting, the variety of answers. So here we are with a very mixed bag of respondents. And if you can see these responses coming up, you'll realize that there is no one answer. Thank you very much for, oh, they're running too fast now. Melvin, for Diana, there's Selma, Luani, Maria Isabel, thank you. Jessica Crystal, Gayatri, thank you. Maybe all of them. Yes, I think so, Renata, thank you. Well, okay, I'm asking you to do this, to try and focus our attention on something, because in the last 50 years, science education, or good science education, and what people think about it, has changed a lot. And these days, we're trying to focus on a particular feature of teaching and learning, which is linked to conceptual development. And these are my responses for you. Now, I'm not saying there are right answers, but if you were asking me, then these will be my 4 strongest features. And if you look at what they are, as I'll show you on the next slide, you'll see there's a message emerging from best practice and research. And this message is very powerful for when you're teaching science these days, particularly with a suite of books like Max Science. And this is why it's important. Learning science is, I've said, it's a cognitive journey, meaning it's an ongoing process, but it builds neurological connections in the learner's brain. Developing concepts, that's a phrase that we might have used before. That's our target goal for all children. And it's about understanding ideas. It's not about remembering facts. It's about building your own understanding. And I think of that as being able to help children to tell their own science stories. And that's why language plays such an important part. And learners' voices have to be given pride of place, where they're talking, where they're asking questions, where they're talking to the teacher, where they're talking to each other. And this is a long, long way away from science education as it was when I was a child, when really my voice wasn't valued at all. I was expected to sit quietly and listen. So the strong message that I give you with this slide is the degree to which science learning these days is heavily language dependent. And it's about confidence to speak. It's about confidence to tell your own story. It's about understanding. Now, I was born in '53, and this is a classroom very similar to the ones I remember. And the situation that I portray here, I'm afraid, was something that lasted for too many years. The teacher at the front, talking away, and everyone else just listening, or maybe at the back we're falling asleep. So what is happening these days? What have we learnt? Well, the photographs are in colour, of course, these days. And the teacher thinks everyone's paying attention. Oh, they're having fun and they're all doing something. And I ask you this, is that good enough? It is a long way from the 1950s, but is it enough? And I don't think it is. It's not enough just to have children occupied and having fun. I'm afraid that's not the job. If they're occupied and having fun, then this is what might happen when they get home. This is a conversation between a parent and a child. If you're a parent, you may well have asked questions like this. Yeah, what did you do at school today? Well, we mixed sugar with water. Ah, but what did you learn then? Well, that's what we learned. We could do these things. Ah, but why did you do this? And there you are. And they're occupied and they're having fun. And I'm telling you, that's not good enough. I don't think it is, and I don't think it's good enough if it were for my children. Where is the cognitive learning? Where is the story that's being told? So children just having fun and being occupied is not what people, certainly researchers today, would consider, and good teachers would consider, good science teaching. So I'm going to take a little side trip analogy here to think about learning as giving children a gift box called science, or being involved in making a gift box. When you make a gift box, children are very good at this. They love decorating cards and decorating boxes, and they can produce a lovely decorated box. But when you look inside the box, the decoration is only surface. It only looks like a science lesson, but there's nothing inside the box. And that's the worry I have about children doing lots of things and having fun. It's so easy to leave the box empty, although it looks highly decorated. And this is one of the reasons why this happens. This may not, of course, be you. Here's a teacher thinking about the science lesson. These are the things they're thinking about. Is there enough materials? Is everyone busy? Have we got enough time to finish and tidy away? We all think about things like this because our minds are in what I call the doing space. We're thinking of health and safety. We're thinking of numbers of rulers and scissors and is Martin behaving himself? We're thinking about the doing space. What I want to move you towards is to think about the learning space. Our minds have to be in this space as well. We need to think about the ideas, the reason why we're doing these things. Why have we got the rulers? Why is there something happening that we're occupied in? What do the children think about it? What changes cognitively are we engaged with here? So moving teachers from thinking a lot about the what to thinking more about the why, and inviting children to tell us about the why of their learning, that's our goal in Max Science. And I call this, in the Teacher's Guide, moving beyond exploration to accommodation. Accommodation is the cognitive development, the understanding of the ideas, the learning to tell the story. And I've seen so many teachers, very good teachers, competent teachers, who struggle to go from the what to the why. And they think that because the room is tidy at the end of the lesson and everyone's finished on time and everyone was busy, then that was a good lesson. And I'm afraid I don't think that's good enough. So in thinking about guiding Max Science, I've really taken our team into the realm of thinking, talking and sharing, children telling stories, having lots of opportunities to speak together and to develop their own understanding. So here's a way of thinking about this approach. Think about children going into your lessons and then think about them at the end of the lesson. And the question to address is, how will they be different? How will my lesson make a difference to their lives, to their understanding, a cognitive difference, the neurological connections which will be different when they leave the lesson because they've thought and talked and listened. They may also, of course, have developed skills. So thinking about the learning outcomes as well as what happens, the why of what happens is critical. So this is our goal. Of course, we mix sugar and water, yes. But what did you learn? And I hope you see the difference here. We want children to be able to talk about their science, talk about their thinking and understanding, and celebrate it at home and at school. That's what I mean by going beyond exploration to accommodation. And that's what we've built into Max Science. So here you are then as a teacher, and we're looking to put something rich and rewarding into the box. And to do that, your head must be in the learning space, and you must be thinking about these sorts of things. And that's exactly what the teacher's guide for Max Science invites you to think about. Okay, I'm finishing that first section now, and just to sum up, yes, science is about being practical, exploring and experiencing and developing skills and attitudes, of course, but it's also about thinking and sharing and building your big ideas. I suppose it's hands-on and brains-on, and hands-on itself is just not good enough. So how do we do this in Max Science? Let's have a look at some of the details. Oh, this is me, by the way, in my garden, and very proudly displaying Year 1 books from Max Science. There are 4 books in the series for each year, and I'll run through the differences in those books now, but they all have the same design feature on the front cover. You'll start off with the student book. Now, of course, the student book is the, I think I may have one here, yes. The student book is, yep, the student book is the textbook that you'll, it's the colourful textbook. It's, I'll show you details in a second. It's full of very high quality graphics and activities for children to do, to think about. It has all the language support materials therein. It's the main textbook. The textbook's supported by the children's own book, the learner's own student workbook. And that's got spaces in, has spaces for them to write. Their name is on the inside cover. It's theirs to take away. It's their record of their achievements. Children will be very proud at the end of each year, walking away with a completed workbook. So that is their book. And it mirrors, excuse the pun with the picture there, it mirrors the work that's covered in the student book. And there is another component we call the journal, and that is an optional component, but it can be very powerful, and it helps to build the bridge between learning at school and learning at home. Now, there are many times when children get home and they need to do homework, or they're asked by parents or older sisters and brothers or uncles, how did you do at school? Tell me what you did at school. Well, the journal is a little vehicle which helps the children make a connection between home and school, and it allows parents and carers and guardians a chance to have a look at the sort of things that were happening in the lessons this week in science. And there are activities in the journal, and there's self-reflection, and there's a place in the journal for guardians and parents to make a comment should they want to, and that can be taken back into the school for the teacher to look at. So that's the third component, and it's going to be a very valuable component for people who have, or schools that have parents who want to get a real interest in science education of their children. Now, all of these components are supported by our very best efforts as teachers to share our philosophy of teaching and learning with you in the teacher's book, which tells you exactly how to run your course and how to manage the activities, even the questions you might like to ask, the challenges that children will face conceptually. They're all in the teacher's book, and there's a teacher's book for each year. So they are the 4 written components for Max Science. But there is a 5th member of the family. And the 5th member of the family recognises that a lot of us are enjoying the delights, particularly these days during lockdown, of electronic communication. And you'll find in the teacher presentation kit available from Macmillan the complete range of textbooks and workbooks to the student's guide, plus much more to support you. And that's very powerful for times when, for example, at the moment where many of us are in lockdown and learning at a distance. and I'll try and illustrate how that works in a second. So in the TPK, you'll find not only the main text, the student book, you'll find things like the scope and sequence, the curriculum that we've followed, and it's largely following an international science curriculum. You'll find skills pages where we have challenges for children based on science skills. And this one is drawing conclusions, for example. So there are activities, extra activities within the TPK. We also have included a number of key images which you can use in the TPK, and they can be used as a cut and paste image, as you'll see me use one in a moment with annotation. But you could focus on an element of some of your teaching with some of these high quality images. It will certainly save you searching for them on the internet. And there are flashcards with keywords and key phrases to help language learning during your science. And they are supported by audio files, which you'll see in a while, audio files on the in the TPK, which you can click on one of the pages of the student's book, and you'll find a very clear articulation of the words, to light up. So children can listen to phrases and words, particularly words they're unfamiliar with, and learn exactly how to pronounce them. There are also tools for annotating the work and highlighting as you wish. So that's the TPK. It gives an extra dimension, as you'll see, to Max Science. So we think the TPK has particular value, particularly when you want to blend your learning for children at school and at home. They may not be well, or they may be in COVID isolation, or you may be, and you may want to maintain contact and use a computer screen as your main mode of communicating. So you'll find that the TPK will give you that dimension to extend your teaching and learning. So children don't have to miss out if they can't go directly to school. You will also use it, I think you would use it in the classroom in everyday use by just drawing on it here and there as the moment requires. It will certainly not take over from the textbooks, which I think will be the primary learning resource. So here's an idea from how I might use Max Science, and I've chosen an image from the TPK, and that's one of the images that you can select. And I've chosen level 3 forces of motion to have a look at in more detail. And when you start level 3 forces of motion, there are 4 different elements to level 3 forces. We're looking at exploration of forces, which we've looked at before in the course. So this is rather revision, and it's just orientation. Then we'll introduce children to measuring forces with a Newton meter, with a force meter. And then we'll have a look at testing, a number of tests in the idea of things that move, comparing things that move, fair testing things that move down slopes, that sort of thing, taking results, making measurements. And finally, there's a section on friction. So that's level 3 forces and motion. And we'll see if we can find the TPK. And I'll just leave this screen and bring the TPK up for us once I minimize this page for you and just show you, there you are. So these are pages straight from the student book. And this is the opening page on forces. And you'll see immediately that the artwork is excellent, and lots of graphics to help us go through. And I'll just illustrate. We've got we have a highlighter pen, and we have a pen here, which if I wanted to highlight something or maybe do something to the text that I wanted children to have a particular focus on. I don't know, something. I'm not very good at this at the moment. Something like this. And then we might want to, we might want to just move from page to page. And Here, when you see a signal like this, a little icon like this, you'll find that when you click on it, it may not work today, but no, I don't think, draw. That's right, there was someone saying draw, it's keywords. What happens when? So phrases like that, which appear in the text, you can just have children listening as a whole class perhaps, or in a small group for those children who are struggling maybe with language, English as a second language. They can have a look at just linking the words with the sounds. So you have here, I'm not quite sure how to get it right. I've made a mistake here somehow. I've made it small, larger than I need to. That doesn't matter. So we're running through just to show you 4.2, measuring forces. And there's a Newton meter introducing the idea. And there's small, the text is minimal. It's critical that we use these ideas, but there's not too much reading. There are plenty of very good images. And those images are designed for you as teachers to pause over and inquire with children, what's going on in this image? What can you see? Why are they doing that? What's going to happen? What's this person doing here with the bathroom scales? Have you ever used them? What do they measure? What do the numbers mean? Let's have a look at a pair of bathrooms. So let's have a look at this. This is part of the third section, which is about fair testing and making measurements about forces and movement. So there is the student book in TPK mode, and there we are. And that's just, I'm just going too fast for the computer to catch up. And that will sharpen up. There we are. And this is about air resistance, good images about air resistance. Okay, I'm going to leave that now because it just gives you, I wanted to give you a flavour of the quality of the production and the sort of material that you'll find in the student book. And this was as it was appearing in the TPK. And I'm back now with the presentation. Thank you for engaging me in that little diversion. So here's an image I've used from the TPK, and if I were teaching forces, this is a fabulous image to offer children. And of course, you as teachers you'll be able to make anything you like of an image like this. The beauty of having it electronically there is that you can annotate it and add things. So I've decided I would add something like this. So here, for example, is this is inviting a question. So why is Nadia smarter than Sam? Why is it that she can even push a much heavier box than he? What's going on here? And of course, ideas about sliding, about forces, about rubbing on the ground, about friction, about the value of wheels. Well, where else do we use wheels? Isn't it a great thing? Wheels, aren't they fabulous? Someone invented the wheels years ago. So the idea of moving things and having reduced friction emerges from an image like this, and you might want to make something else of it, of course. But it's there for you as a teacher in the flashcards to have a good quality image around which discussions can focus. I like this image too. This is again from the TPK, and it's an image which describes one of the activities that children might want to do. It's about, of course, wind resistance and moving against the wind. And of course, it's part of forces. And I might use this image to create a discussion forum. Remember, children's voices, learners' voices are critical. Let's give them something to talk about and to think about. So why does the car move more slowly? Well, let's ask the students. So this is a springboard which you can use to get children working in small groups to discuss the answer to the question, why does the car move more slowly? So this is the why dimension. It's not just what are we doing, it's why are we doing it and why do these things happen? And it's that conversation, that dialogue, that discussion, that thought process that will push understanding one stage further, but will enable children to develop their own science stories. I thought while I was on this image, I'd show another version. Here we are. Sam, we've got our first results. Now let's change something. So this is science looking at variables, and can we change one of the variables and then see what happens? Well, what could we change? Sam has asked a question, and that was a question, of course, you'd ask the children. Maybe we reduce the number of books and make a lower slope. Maybe we have a different car. Maybe have a larger piece of paper. Maybe we switch the fan to number 3. You can choose. That is good practical science, science investigations at its best. It doesn't have to be done on a table. On the floor is probably far better than that. But you'll be able to use equipment that's in your school to imitate something like this. But the critical thing is the dialogue that accompanies the image. And you can tell me probably what I'm going to put in that box. You're right. I think doing this is a way of really giving a gift to children, the gift of understanding, of dialogue, of confidence in their science. So they can go home and explain not just what they did, but why they did it and why it was important. Particularly for language speakers, young language speakers of any language really, but if you're second language speakers in your class, these key flashcard words can be really powerful. There's a whole selection of them in Max Science TPK, and I've chosen 3 here from the forces section. And how might you use flashcards? Well, you're experienced teachers, you won't need me to tell you how to use these. If I were doing it myself, I don't know, what I may well display one of these words as large as I can on some sort of interactive board, or have it printed out. And there are questions that I might engage with. I certainly do think that children should articulate every science word many, many times. Put it in a song, sing it loud. It's only by saying the words, gravity, that you really start to own them. And let's talk to each other. What does it mean? What do you think it means? Have you heard it before? Let's share our thoughts. Let's get our voices activated. Let's turn our brains on. What do we already know? What do we want to know? Let's listen to each other. Of course, one of the things I'm trying to do for you teachers is, and as I did for myself, is to take the pressure off us, because our voices are not as important as the children's voices. So by this approach, it's the children that will be doing all the hard work. At the end of the lesson, they will be tired, not you. That's the key to successful teaching and how to live longer. Make the children do more work than the teacher. And of course, it all adds to understanding the ideas in a more deeper and more meaningful way. If children can tell their stories because they have confidence of language, then you're winning. In the TPK, there's also evidence of their skills-based sheets, and I've chosen one here and thinking about how I might use this in forces. We're trying to get children to do their own investigation, and they're invited here to come up with a scientific question, and that could be quite challenging for level 3 children. And it's always a good idea to offer them something just to kickstart them, little scaffolded tasks. So I might offer them some investigations involving movement, and let's see if we can find some. How about this one? I might ask children, could this be the scientific question we're asking? Well, I think it probably could. That's a really good question to try and ask just with this equipment. Do you think this is another one? Yeah, I think so. Do some shoes slide easier than others? It's the same idea, of course, but it's just a different phrase. How about this? Well, that's an interesting question, but it's not a very good scientific question for this experiment. So by adding some red herrings like this, we can make children think and talk and argue why a good question is a good question and why a bad question is not really a good question at all to ask. And there are others here, of course, that you might, I mean, these are the ones I thought of. Of course, are boys' shoes more smelly than girls' shoes? That's a very interesting question, but it's not something you're going to find out by sliding the shoes down a slope. So by doing something like this, you're giving children the feeling that yes, there are scientific questions to be asked, and some are worth asking, and some are not worth asking. And finally, I just wanted to mention assessment, because there are plenty of opportunities in Max Science for assessment, and that's a sheet from the student book, What Have I Learnt sheet, directly relating to forces, and they are talking about friction, talking about force measurements, Newton meters, and a bit of a language skills task. And here's one which is looking at data, and because there is data measurement in this section, simple charts about what are the forces that you used, or the times, or the distances things moved. There are a lot of skills-based activities in this forces section for level 3. And so there's another task there which is in the journal for children to tackle at home. And also from the journal is a forces task based on language, for practicing language skills and recognizing words. And of course, you won't need me to tell you how motivating it is for children to see they can do things and be successful in their assessments, and even get involved in self-assessment or peer assessment and celebrate each other's learning. Because if they actually celebrate their own learning, they're far more motivated to move forward. And of course, that's the route to richer understanding. Well, I'm moving towards the end of this presentation now. I've talked a little bit about the philosophy of teaching and learning, which underpins Max Science. And I've talked a bit about Max Science itself. So I'll leave you with this slide, which just takes us back to the key points. Remembering language and children telling their own stories is a real focus for us. It's a way of giving them a really important gift, the gift of confidence, the gift of telling their own science stories, becoming their own scientist, far, far better as a gift than remembering the names of things. Being confident to explain things, that's the real target. As teachers, in order to achieve this for children, you have to move your heads both between the doing space and the learning space, thinking about the questions you might want to ask or how to encourage dialogue. Remember, you are being well supported in all of these endeavours by the Max Science team. All of the written materials and the TPK, they're all at your disposal to use as you wish, and they are a full science course. And the teacher's guide will give you a really good grounding in our philosophy. Could be used as a teacher training tool in itself. All our very best ideas are there. And I'm 67 now. I'm not going to write another set of teacher's guides. All I know is in that teacher's guidebook and my team. And we're very proud of that as well. We're very proud to be able to share it with you as well. And finally, I just wish you good luck in very difficult times, which won't last for too long. And next year and the year after, and for the rest of your careers, you'll be moving forward, hopefully with science education, thinking about children's ideas, children's voices, science stories, and moving into the learning space as well as the doing space. So thank you very much for listening and good luck. Thank you very much, Rainer. And that's me finished the webinar.